Welcome to the Be Gritty podcast, where sports psychology meets business strategy for entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Holly. Now let's be gritty. Do you remember the day you decided to start your own business? The fear, the excitement, the adrenaline, the endless possibilities? Well, today on our podcast, I'm interviewing a great friend of mine, Lindsey Welty, and she is a new entrepreneur and ultrarunner, and she has decided to start her own coaching business. And we are going to talk about all the things with her today, all the feelings, everything she's experiencing, her doubts, her fears, her excitement. And I'm just excited to introduce a good friend of mine to you. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you. I don't know about entrepreneur, but here we are.
Here we are. You know, that's the feeling a lot of people get. Like, even when I talk about my target market being athletic entrepreneurs, a lot of my audience goes, well, I don't know if I would call myself an athlete, you know, but it's like they totally are, but they don't see themselves as that. I think it's the same thing with entrepreneurs. They go, well, I don't know if I'm an entrepreneur yet. I don't feel like that's my thing, especially if it's more of a side gig, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because you work full time.
Yes, in healthcare. I work full-time plus.
Multiple jobs.
Yes.
In healthcare.
Yes.
And you train all the time.
Yes, which is also a part-time job, like time-wise. So I have 4 jobs right now, maybe.
Yeah.
And then
you're busy.
Yes. But coaching is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, like years. But like, I don't know, things have just been like adding up lately. Like I feel like I've just been like listening that like now is the time, like the universe is telling me.
Now is the time. I mean, we all do that. We think about these cool ideas for months or years. Like, I mean, just starting this podcast, I was like, years ago, I was like, I'm going to do it January 1st. I'm going to do it January 1st, and never did it.
Right.
And then I was like, this year, the same thing. I'll start in January. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was like, no, we're just going to start.
Exactly. By January 1st.
Yes. So that's your goal. By January 1st, you are starting your coaching business.
Yes.
So what is your coaching business going to be?
I want to coach runners.
Awesome.
I think with my current interest right now, kind of focusing on ultra runners a bit, but not exclusively.
Yeah. Okay. Because you just got into the ultra running world.
Yes. So I ran my first ultra 3 years ago.
Yes.
And then like, again, kind of stepping my way into it, and then just was like, you know what, let's go big. And I started and I did a 100-miler.
And that was just a month ago.
It was 6-ish weeks ago.
Yeah. So, because you did a 50K on the Monon Trail, which here in Carmel is this, it was called the full Mo.
Yes.
Right. So you run all the way from, what is it, Sheridan
to Indianapolis. And it's a rail trail. So it is paved, flat, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's slightly downhill going that way.
Slightly, yes.
Slightly. I mean, it's Indiana. There's no hills here.
Exactly.
But, you know, for the people who grew up here, it's slightly downhill.
Right.
So then a few years passed. You've done that a few times now.
Yes.
You won it your first year.
I did. The first year they had it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then this year, our friend Brian took you from me and talked you in, because we all trained together.
Right.
Talked you into doing a 100-miler. I mean, a 50K versus a 100-miler is quite the difference.
It is.
Yeah. So tell us
70 miles.
Only 70 miles. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Mostly I was curious. I wanted to see if I could. You know, I heard Brian talking about it, and I think that's also in this like starting a business coaching thing. Like, again, things have been clicking lately that like running is very clearly my passion.
Yeah.
So how can I make that, you know, more in my life?
Yeah.
And for years, like we're talking like 5 years ago or something, I was like, you know, eventually my 10-year plan is to have like my side hustle, because I'm a workaholic. Like, I just am.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, maybe something to delve into another day, another podcast.
Yeah.
So like I wanted my side hustle to eventually be something to do with running.
Yeah.
That was my 10-year plan.
10 years. I mean, we throw those dreams so far down the road.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes.
I mean, it's good to have a 10-year plan, but it's funny how we're like, I'll do that later, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So, but also 10 years flies fast because I feel like that was maybe between 5 and 6 years that I said that.
Yeah.
So we're kind of getting up on that. And I just remembered that I said that actually. So then like we said, just do it.
Yeah. And that's kind of what you did with the 100-miler, which
Yes.
I will say, if you've had the dream of a coaching business longer than 5 years and you only delved into ultras for 3, I mean, you jumped on that train a little bit faster. So
Yes.
because it's more comfortable, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're just moving up in distances, changing terrain, but it's the motion of running.
Right.
Where when you work in healthcare and you're doing that, that's a lot different than actually running your own business.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a whole different skill set. And does that feel exciting to you? Does that feel intimidating to you?
Very intimidating.
Yeah.
I think I've actually said to you that I'm the worker bee. Like, I just like to just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll work. Like, I'm definitely not lazy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I just work. So now being the one kind of, I don't know, creating the work in a way.
Yeah.
Is very different.
Yeah, because you are the queen bee in that scenario. And but the interesting thing about entrepreneurs is that you're kind of both, right? Because actually entrepreneurship is a ton of work. And a lot of people like that, get rich quick things and like all this stuff, right? And we just know as entrepreneurs, like it doesn't really work out that way all the time, right? Of course, there are those stories where, people hit it out of the park right away. Same with running. Like, people go out there and run and it's like, how did you just do that? Right. But there is that really hardworking part of it, which I think you already have. And I mean, I've seen even in your running, you are the most consistent person I've ever seen. Like, it blows my mind. Like, I preach consistency and I look at you and I'm like, I need to learn a few things.
In 4th grade, I was named the most dependable young lady.
The most dependable young lady.
At the end of the year, everybody got a little pin with a little award.
Yeah.
That was mine.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Oh my goodness. And you're very dependable. And I would say one of the biggest things that people have a hard time overcoming in entrepreneurship is consistency. Because they're like, oh, this is boring. It's the same thing, right? You get training for a long time. It feels really boring. And you want to mix it up and do different things, but it's really the consistency and the small things over time. Well, it's the same thing with entrepreneurship. So I actually think you're going to be a lot more successful than you think.
I know, that's encouraging because those things that you're talking about are like my strengths, like the kind of the just show up in a small way.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of my strengths.
It is. It absolutely is. And I think that you're going to have to be stretched in different ways, right? Because you and I are a little bit of introvert extrovert, but you're more introvert extrovert than me. And you do have to like put yourself out there. And that can feel a little intimidating and a little scary. So what are you kind of thinking as you're deciding to start this business?
Yes.
You put a date out there. I'm going to do it by January 1st because your birthday is December 31st.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it fits.
Yeah,
People might be interested. That's a time when people set some goals, maybe.
Fitness goals.
Right.
Absolutely. So what have you been doing to kind of get this started and get that ball rolling? Because when we decide we're going to do something and we usually have some sort of plan in our head or we're like, we have to figure this out. So where are you kind of at in that?
For me, the first step, I think, is getting certified. With running coaching, I don't think you have to be certified. Certainly, like, you can do whatever you want and put it out there. And if anybody wants to do it, they can too.
Yeah.
But I feel like for myself, I definitely want to be certified. So I'm working on that certification.
Awesome.
That in my mind is just kind of a matter of time. Like, I just have to sit down and complete the course and do it. But I feel like I'm comfortable with that. That's more so just like a time hurdle.
Yeah. So if you set kind of a goal, a milestone, like, okay, I want to be certified by this date.
Not specifically, but I need to be certified before I launch business. Yeah. So
you inadvertently have a date Right. Okay.
Right. A week before, we'll say.
Yeah. These are the little things like, and this is what I talk about with people with businesses is like, usually we have these big, like, we're going to launch this, we're going to start this.
Mhm.
And then there's all these pieces in between, like, are deciding to start and what actually has to take place to launch the thing. And so I encourage people, hey, create those milestones so you feel like it's just like in training, right? Where it's like, okay, we're going to get through this phase of base building, then we're going to go into speed work, and then we're going to go into endurance strength training, right? And so it's kind of that same thing where you break it into milestones. So you can kind of use like, hey, the certification is one milestone.
Right.
So what other steps do you know you need to take before you launch?
Well, in a related little anecdote that maybe I don't know if I should share or not. In like some high school class, we had to like get together in these groups and like we had to take like kind of like a personality type test.
Oh yeah.
And then we had to get together with our like group, and then we had to plan a picnic. Let's just say like, so we all get together in my group and we're like planning this picnic, and it was a disaster.
Oh no.
My group, like I looked around and the other groups are all in these like circles. My group is just like crammed together awkwardly. And we had like hamburgers and plates and like drinks, but no cups. Like we were going around the room talking about all the picnics, and I was like, oh, we don't have cups. That's a problem.
That's hilarious.
So I need to work on my milestones, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, that's one thing you can do is just kind of go, okay, I'm not even 100% sure what I need. Sometimes, especially when we start a business, we don't know what we don't know. Right. It's kind of that thing when you start running and you're like, I'm just going to go run. And you don't know that all your runs aren't supposed to be 100% all out. Right. And it takes time and you learn. And I think that's part of the gift of entrepreneurship and being a runner is realizing, okay, this is probably going to happen to me in this entrepreneurial journey as well. Like I'm going to fall and fail forward. Right. As long as we keep failing forward and not like get overwhelmed and just stop. So what are the things that once you launch, do you have a name? Do you have like, are you building a website? What are the things that you're like, or what's your plan here?
I'm workshopping it. Currently, my idea is Welty Endurance Run Coaching. So my name, obviously, it's me.
Yes.
Endurance. I want the word endure in there because that's a word like kind of for you. Gritty. That's a word that you identify with. Endure and endurance is a word that I identify with.
Yes.
And then like run coaching, like, what is this? It's a run coaching business.
Yeah, very clear. We know what this is.
Exactly. Like, I don't know. I don't like things that like, if you're looking for something, you just want to know what it is.
Yeah.
So that's the current. I
like it.
I kind of like that it spells out like if you use the initials, it's WERC.
I like that.
So it's kind of like a work.
Ooh, that's cool though. I like that.
So that's kind of my idea. I have an idea of someone that I could reach out to help me with a logo.
Nice.
Because I am not artistic.
Yeah.
I think another like kind of going on like, because I'm talking myself into this.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Daily. I'm talking myself.
Yeah.
Are you really doing this?
Right.
So I have like some ideas like of people to like kind of reach out and help me with this and like identifying my strengths, my weaknesses, who I can help, because like I don't have to be everything. Like an entrepreneur you are, but
you wear a lot of hats, but you don't have to do all the things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I can like, have someone help me with a logo or things that I'm like, I know are not my strengths that are just going to be like, it's wiser to outsource things that are going to be frustrating to me.
Yes.
Like an artwork type of thing. That is not me.
If it takes you 5 hours to create a logo when you could have handed that off, like it's like, time is money, right? Yes. And how much frustration do you want to feel towards your business or not? And I think you've already learned one of the most important lessons in entrepreneurship is that you can't do it alone.
Right.
And you shouldn't do it alone. And a lot of people struggle with that because they're trying to hold on to finances, right? A lot of times when you start a business, you may not have a lot of capital. You work a lot of jobs. So you probably have the benefit of having some capital there.
Right.
And and people start to wear all the hats and then they can't let them go.
Mhm.
So even if you have to start wearing all the hats, you shouldn't stay there. It's like you need to
Right.
almost have a milestone plan of getting out of that space, right?
Mhm.
And for you to already kind of realize, oh, I can't do this by myself. I'm going to reach out to people who are good at this.
Right.
That's awesome. And another app that you could use is Canva, and it's free, and you can
Okay.
do a lot on there. So once you get your logo,
Mhm.
you can kind of create images for social media or things on there.
Mhm.
And it's so helpful. I mean, I use that to create my podcast, like things, and but yeah, logos are super hard. So
Yeah.
that's a good one to outsource. I try and make it, and I'm like, this is not evoking what I wanted it
Right.
to evoke.
Nothing like anything artwork does
Yeah.
not look in real life as I want it to look in my
Same,
mind.
same. I can't get what's in my mind out on paper.
Correct.
Ever. I say that all the time. Oh my goodness.
So other things that I'm kind of like rolling around in my head, like I'm obviously going to have to come up with a pricing structure, like
Yeah.
what exact services I'm going to offer,
Yeah.
like tiered services, like access to me as a coach, like can an athlete call me at 2:00 in the morning kind of thing.
Right. Boundaries, like
Yes.
that's a big one with clients
Yes.
for sure.
So those are all things, and then other things that I haven't even realized yet.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have already figured out quite a bit. I have to say, like you've thought really well out just all the different pieces to it. And so here's a question for you. As you're figuring this out, as you're going, okay, my pricing and my offer, that's a huge one. If you can have a really clear offer and you can price it really well, that's like 90% of the work, right? Then it's just getting the word out there. But what are some of the emotions you've felt as you've done this? Like you and I had a conversation on text a couple of days ago where you're like, I'm listening to this podcast and maybe I should just be under someone. And I'm like, no, don't do that. And you're like, I knew you'd say that. So what are some of those kind of like mental hurdles and emotional hurdles you're kind of jumping over and through?
The biggest one where that one came from was overwhelm.
Yeah.
So I feel confident that I'm new at coaching.
Yeah.
So I know that it's going to be a little rough, but I think that it will get better.
Yeah.
As with anything.
Yep.
But the administrative stuff is very overwhelming to me. I work in healthcare.
Yeah.
Like I went to school to be a nurse. I am a nurse.
Yeah.
It is very straightforward.
Yeah. You know what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So overwhelm is the biggest one because this particular podcast was regarding the business of coaching.
Yeah.
So they were just listing all of these things. And I was just like, oh,
maybe don't listen to that one yet.
yes. So, but between talking to you and talking to my husband, like,
yeah,
okay, we can do this again. I don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
And, other than overwhelm, putting yourself out there, like,
yeah,
I'm going to have to like ask people for money basically.
Yeah. How does that feel to you? That's
Terrifying.
a big terrifying. And why? What would you say is the reason?
Again, diving into like some psychological like things
rabbit
over
hole.
there. Yeah, like what like putting a dollar amount on my worth is just very weird. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a good job. So like if it was anyone else, I could easily say like, oh no, your time is worth, and I could
put a number out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, something. But like saying like, yes, it's me and my time is worth something.
Yeah.
Is just like, I don't know.
Yeah. That's a hard one for a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs when they're pricing out their offers and their services or even their products. Like products are a little bit easier, right? Because you're like, okay, it's a widget and everybody else is selling this widget for this much. And so that, and you can kind of do that to get a ballpark, right? Here's what other coaches charge. Here's the length of their term agreements. Here's, what ultra coaches, well, just like, if you're going to coach them for 3 months or 5 months or a year, sorry, don't be overwhelmed. It's all fine. So I think what I have done is kind of done what you just said. I take myself out of the equation because sometimes we have that imposter syndrome where we're like,
oh, 100%.
can I do this? Like, who's going to hire me? Like,
oh yes,
what's what's my authority? What are my credentials?
I feel like if anyone like reaches out to me, my first question to them is, "Are you sure?"
Don't do that. Don't do that.
But I'll keep it inside. I'll say it inside.
But we feel that, and
yes.
honestly, we all do. Even people that have been entrepreneurs. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 12 years.
That's so
13
cool.
years.
That's so cool.
And I still, like, if I launch a new product, I'm like, oh, did I price it right? Or like, or did I price it too low? So here's the one thing I'll tell you. This is a different industry, but still, the concept plays over. In the marketing world, I knew a guy who underpriced his offer, but for him, he was like, charged $40,000 for this marketing package, right? To this business. And this other company came in and charged $250,000.
Oh, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Guess who the company went with?
I have no idea. I would say the lower one.
Nope. The one that charged $250,000. And you know what feedback my friend got? We didn't think you knew what you were doing because you priced yourself too low. And that was the highest he had ever priced himself.
Right.
Right. And so ever since I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, your value you place on yourself is a value that other people are going to place on you. And when we look at our experiences, we downplay them. But when we look at other people's experience and their authority, we upplay them.
Yes.
Right. So one of the things that I do is like almost disassociate and go, okay, character A over here, you know, like Mrs. Reed or whatever over here is, a mental fitness business coach. And here's her credentials and here's everything. And I write it out almost like the third person. Right. And then I can easily go, okay, you're priced too low or you're priced too high or you're priced just right.
Okay.
So that's a good exercise to kind of do and go, okay, take yourself, take your emotions, take your self-worth out of it.
Right.
Right. Because it's a service you're offering and you have a ton of experience and you're one of the most consistent runners I've ever met in my life. Like you and my friend Kazumi are probably rivals in this area from California. And so you definitely have the credentials to do these things, so I think take that emotion out and go, okay, like, and you're really good at this too. You're really good at looking at things like black and white, like logical. And so if you can kind of do that and go into that headspace, I think you'll feel a lot better about it.
Yeah.
Because when people call you, you're confident, like, no, this is totally what I'm doing. And you're going to get pushback from someone at some point in time. And it's how have you kind of built yourself up in that moment is how you're going to be able to respond in that moment. And this is a lesson that a lot of entrepreneurs learn.
Okay.
Is when they're desperate for money, which you're not. But a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start businesses, they are, that they'll take anyone.
Okay.
They're like, I'll work with you and you and you. And those clients that pay the least, are the most needy clients than the ones that pay the most. Like it's night and day difference. Someone who pays me $10,000 versus someone who pays me $1,500, like the $10,000 people actually need less.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Why do you think that is? Like, is that like one client? Do you think it's like a malicious thing? Like they're trying to get more?
I don't think it's
or
malicious.
Do you think it's like, I don't know.
It's a mindset.
Okay.
It all comes down to mindset. So when someone comes to me and they're willing to pay me $10,000 to coach them or go through my programs or whatever, and my programs are not $10,000, but I'm just saying, for example,
easy math here.
Yeah, easy math. They have a mindset that I value what I'm going to get out of this. And obviously what you offer has to be communicated very clearly and the value has to be there. And there needs to be like, testimonials and authority and that stuff gets built up over time.
Right.
And the longer you do stuff, the more you can charge because you have more experience. But the people that pay the less amount, the $1,500 or whatever it might be, tend to come to you in a really desperate situation. And they need help and they can't pay the big guys to do it or whatever, or they can't afford this but they need the help, but they want wine on a beer budget. Right. It's just a mindset thing and nothing against those people. I've been that person. Like, I'm like, I can't afford this. Can someone help me for this amount, or whatever. But as I've been an entrepreneur longer, I've learned like, you know what, I need help with this specific piece. I can do this piece myself if I don't have the money to pay for something. And then other things, I've paid a lot of money for programs that I was like, no, I'm going to get a lot of value out of this. This is going to take me to the next level. I'm not afraid to invest in myself in that way. And I've had to change my mindset around that. So you'll get different clients that have those different mindsets. And the ones that balk at your price, they may have been the ones that are trying to call you at 2 a.m.
Right.
Is my point, right? So never feel like you have to take everybody who comes to you. One of the biggest things as entrepreneurs when we launch a business, one of the first things we should figure out besides our offer, our price, our business name is, who is our ideal client?
Right.
And are we attracting those people with the messaging that we're using, where we're trying to find people? Like, where does my ideal client hang out? Right. And where are they? Like, maybe they're a new ultra runner, but they've been in the running world enough. They've hired other coaches. They know kind of the scene of that versus like a first time person who's never hired a coach. They may be fine with your price, or they may be like, I didn't know it was that much. Then they go look around, they realize it is, right? So than another coach, you just have to communicate the value add that you're providing versus somebody else, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of pieces to this, but I would say stick to the simplicity and go out there and just ship it, right? That's something we say is just launch it. It's the Nike, just do it, right? Don't copyright me for that. But, just that idea of just get it out there.
Right.
And then you can adjust as you go. I tell people all the time, it's not written in stone. It's written in Google Docs. You can change it.
Yes. That is like when everything that you have like done in your Be Gritty, I'm like, she's talking directly to me. And like, now you actually are talking directly to me.
And you are my ideal client. You're a business owner.
We're winning.
Yeah, we're winning. And I attracted the right person. So it's working. Yeah. So before we kind of wrap up, I want to kind of review a little bit of, you decide to start a business.
Yes.
You set your date.
Yes.
You now know you need some more milestones.
Yes.
And you've figured out that
I brought a notebook.
There we go. You can write some of these. I'll give you the transcript afterwards. Okay. You can write some of these ideas down that you have for pricing and names and all that. Get that out there. And then with the overwhelm and the imposter syndrome, that's just going to come up every once in a while.
I think that's going to come up a lot.
Or a lot. I'm trying to.
But it will get better, right?
Like, it does. It does. And the more that you do it, the better you feel, and the imposter syndrome starts to leave. It's like when you show up on the day of a race.
Yeah.
And like the first time I was in a sub-elite field and I looked around me, like my first marathon was 3:03, right? And I'm here trying to make the Olympic trials. This is 5 years ago. I needed to drop 18 and a half minutes to make the Olympic trials. And I had followed some of these other ladies on Instagram and they're like 2:46. They only had to drop a minute, for the 2020 standard.
Right.
And I'm like, I have absolutely no business being here, but we're going to do this anyway. And it was so exciting. And one of the things I teach people in my coaching practice is, and I learned this from Steve Magnus. So this is not my own. I learned this from Steve Magnus. I'll give him credit. Right. But if you can look at something as a challenge instead of a threat, your mind actually gives you adrenaline to meet the challenge and like figure out ways to overcome it. Versus if it's a threat, you do that like fight, flight, or freeze, and you kind of shut down, right? So when that imposter syndrome rises up, just ask yourself, am I seeing this as a challenge or a threat? And then kind of like get your mind into that other place or get someone to help you do that, right? And then you can kind of strategize your way around things. But is there any other mental like hurdles you've had to overcome in this first phase of deciding to start a business?
Not that I can think of right now.
Cool. I mean, overwhelm and imposter syndrome are the two big ones.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised that those are the first two you figured out.
Yes.
I think the accountability piece, which is something else I help people with, is the piece that you're really good at, is that consistency and getting stuff done, doing what you say you're going to do. And that piece is sometimes the hardest piece for people to do. And that one you are already a master of. So I think you're going to be doing fine. Well, you guys, what we're going to end up doing is checking in with Lindsey once in a while. We don't have a set schedule yet, but we're going to check in with her on these different phases of becoming an entrepreneur, starting a business, launching that business, and then kind of tweaking all that stuff as you go.
Mhm.
We're going to see the different mental fitness challenges she's experiencing, and when does that imposter syndrome and overwhelm arise, and what is she doing to overcome those things. So stick along for the journey. It's been so fun having you on my podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, it was super fun. Lindsey's one of my really good friends, so I will let you guys know. I'll add it to the show notes once we get her contact info and all of that. So if you need a coach for ultra running or any kind of running, she's your go-to person. Coming soon, January 1st, putting it out there. Yes. And you can reach out to her. For now, you can reach out to me and I'll get you in contact with her. But when she gets all her website and all that stuff up,
yes,
we will let you know. So thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the podcast
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you for listening to the Be Gritty podcast, where sports psychology meets business strategy for entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave a review and share it with other entrepreneurs. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on our weekly episodes. And dare to be gritty.